2 dead and properties damaged in all-night brawl. A health crisis emerging in the nation's capital. And Lands Minister explains 99-year land lease.
This is National EMTV News with Helen Seah.
Good evening and thanks for joining us for Sunday's news. Lands and Physical Planning Minister John Rosso has announced various reforms the Lands Department is taking to ensure issues relating to land are addressed. One of these reforms is to give more powers to control land dealings in provinces. This will be managed by the provincial administration through the Division of Lands. The Lands Minister was speaking to the newly established Provincial Land Board of Oro Province recently.
Speaking to the newly established Oro Provincial Land Board in Popondetta recently, Lands Minister John Rosso announced various reforms the Lands Department is undertaking. Under these reforms, the department is embarking on the provincial administration to support the Lands Department to take on land administrative functions. This is to encourage all land dealings to be done and verified in the province through the Land Board process.
You need to ensure that your provincial lands people and lands division is catered and has adequate responsibilities, adequate infrastructure, adequate personnel to ensure, and smart personnel and highly technical personnel. So they have to be able to provide that advice to the board. Without that, the board cannot operate.
The department is also faced with various challenges that includes land allocation, land ownership, land process and procedures, and customary land issues. To address these, various land reform concepts were introduced. These initiatives include the successful hosting of the 2019 Customary Land Summit, which improved the department's position of dealing with customary land issues, and the introduction of strata titling system, with bills to be tabled in Parliament, among others.
That is where strata title, similar to Australia, where you have big buildings or you have units, each individual person can own a unit and the block of land he sits on, instead of currently they just have subleases. That also increases revenue, and that increases ownership for people and make it more affordable, so you can own a unit inside a block of buildings.
The Lands Minister also highlighted the need to review the Land Act. This is to ensure the Land Act is in line with the current land issues affecting the people. He says the current Land Act is outdated.
And make sure that we do some changes to the Land Act so it can be more conducive to our people and our country. A lot of it is, the Lands Act was done under the colonial style of doing business, and we have to tune it and change it to make sure that it meets our requirements as a developing nation and according to our principles and customary cultures also.
Rayon Lakingu National, EMTV News.
Lands Minister John Rosso has explained the 99-year state lease that many people have misunderstood. He says after 99 years, when the state lease expires, the land goes back to the state and not customary landowners. The state then decides on the next owner of the state lease.
Freehold land is held in perpetuity. That was done during the colonial days, and that is outright purchase, and that land has been held in perpetuity. You cannot do anything with that. That land belongs to whoever converted it at the time, and the state acquired it. A lot of people also have been misled by saying that 99-year state leases, after the expiry of the state lease, it goes back to customary landowners. That is not true. After the customary lease, it goes back to the owner, which is the state who acquired it at that time. So through the state, in my authority and position as a Minister of State, I represent the government. That 99-year lease comes back to the state, and then if it goes back to the Lands Board to determine its future. If, for example, there's someone who has met the covenants of the lease and sits on that lease, like probably this hotel that we're standing in front, this lease, that means that it goes back to the state, and because there's good development here, the state renews it back to the owner of this place.
Kikori landowners in the PNG LNG and Kutubu oil pipeline projects are frustrated over long delays in benefit payments. Some of the landowner leaders spoke to EMTV News yesterday, saying the Mineral Resources Development Company has not come out clear to them after promising them that the payments would be made. Given the continuous delays, the landowners are considering the option of creating their own landowner company through which benefit payments can be made.
The payment, both the projects, national projects like Kutubu Oil Pipeline and PNG LNG Pipeline came through to Kikori, and the payment which was declared on the 15th of June this year has been delayed from June to today. So that is why we are here. What is the delay about the MLDC, the company that is the subsidy company to the government, has not come out clear yet. PNG LNG payment was done last year in March, and that payment was for 2014 to 16. The royalty payment was for the 2014 to 2018, and equity payment for 2014 to 16. So that was the only payment that we received for the LNG project. Oil pipeline thing, the Kutubu oil project agreement was signed, and in the agreement it is clearly stated that after 2 weeks after the declaration of the payment, the MLDC has to do the payout to the landowners. So now for the payment that was declared in June, we were told that it was 2017 payment, but the company and the government has to come out clearly. Like we have valve stations, both oil and gas valve stations at Kikori, but we should have done something, like close the valve stations and all that. But we are peace-loving people. We Kikorians are peace-loving people. We also do not want to take law into our own hands.
You're watching National EMTV News. We'll be back with tonight a closer look after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back to the news. Port Moresby's health system has been stretched to the limit over the past week as Port Moresby General Hospital reports escalating COVID-19 case numbers and deaths occurring at the hospital like never seen before. City authorities have been holding intense discussions, analysing the situation closely to decide on whether to go into lockdown or not. Here's Dennis Aurora with this week's A Closer Look.
Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in PNG, the National Capital District has recorded over 7,000 confirmed cases and over 100 deaths so far, according to statistics from the National Control Centre this week. These are the highest figures compared to other provinces. The Port Moresby General Hospital, the country's largest referral hospital, is currently experiencing the worst scenario it has ever come across since its establishment, especially in terms of patient numbers and deaths. Hospital CEO Dr. Paki Molumi echoed some alarming news to the public this week, revealing the reality of the situation.
So we, as the city's hospital, serving over 1 million population of the National Capital District, Central Province, as well as parts of Gulf, is reaching a crisis point. We lost 3 kids 3 days ago. Children, I'm talking about, who died of COVID. This surge is not discriminating anyone. It's affecting everybody. 50 deaths on arrival. These are people who died at home, brought to our mortuary to be stored. On Tuesday, we received 40 deaths on arrival. On Thursday, yesterday afternoon, we received 30. That's in the afternoon. The numbers may have gone up in the night. This is something that we have not seen in the previous years or months. The number of people who are coming into our emergency department, gasping for air, has increased, and also the number of deaths that are seeking to be stored in the mortuary has also increased.
With the ever-growing population of the capital city, especially with the Delta strain now, serving those affected is proving difficult.
This hospital has been under enormous stress for over 20 years now, because it was built, as I say, to cope with a catchment population of about 200,000. But now you may come up over 500,000 now inside the national capital, like using PMG or some housing blown. And so we've been under stress long time pinis. But now this COVID sick here. And we knew it was coming. We just had the timing a little bit wrong because we didn't, it's a new disease. So how can you understand everything about a new disease before you get it? It took us a year or two to understand how HIV would affect our population. And it's taken several months for us to understand how COVID would affect our population.
Senior medical doctors at POMGEN have realized that the original COVID-19 infection mostly affected middle-aged to elderly people and not so much of the younger population. But the emergence of the Delta variant has a different effect. Professor Glenn Moller, head of obstetrics and gynecology at the hospital, explained this in an interview with EMTV News this week.
So we thought, looking at other countries, that the original variants are all wild strain, all kind number one COVID, and by come up in big plastic or same been come up long Italy, in UK, in kind place or same. But we didn't realize at that time that these original strains of COVID were not very dangerous to young people. So PNG's got a population that's 75% under the age of 30. So this demographic, kind structure, age group, population bulimia, is the main thing that protected us from a serious epidemic last year and the beginning of this year. But this Delta strain, it's much more infectious. Instead of infecting 1 or 2 people in a household in 24 hours, it infects 4 or 5, so it's twice as infectious. And not only that, it causes sickness, severe sickness in people. And emno se mari lo liangpla. Or liangpla too is a kisim big plastic, including some children, unfortunately.
Dr. Mola also emphasized on the risk that pregnant mothers face during this time, where he says they are highly vulnerable to various diseases, including COVID-19. The intensity of the situation at POMGEN is having an effect on the rest of the city, and NCD Governor Poes Pakop made this statement earlier in the week on the way forward.
If we look at lockdown, we've tried it before in first wave, second wave, and you all have seen the result of it. We've spent a lot of time, effort, energy, resources. NCDC, for example, city manager is here. This year, I think we've spent nearly going up to 8 or 9 million. Support the police and all the stakeholders to do the protocol enforcement in the city. But the reality out there is that it's hard for us to enforce the protocols. So I'm not rushing, and I don't want us in the city to rush to a mechanism or strategy that is high risk of not working.
He said people in the city need to be self-reliant in looking after themselves to stop the spread and infection of COVID-19.
Most of the people who are getting infected, 95%, are unvaccinated, Olinoxim vaccine. Most of the people who are dying up to now are unvaccinated. There is an issue or a debate here and there whether 1 or 2 got vaccinated and died. It's a debate. But the reality, hard fact is that 95% online Olinoxim infection they are unvaccinated or they decided not to get the vaccine.
With the experience of past lockdowns soon after initial cases of COVID-19 were confirmed in NCD, Governor Pakop preferred for people to be vaccinated to achieve the targeted herd immunity of 160,000 rather than going into lockdown.
I am very, very sensitive to the effect it could have on our livelihood of our people because they depend on cash. And the government doesn't have cash to give to our people at this time. So as much as possible, I don't want the restriction to affect the capacity of our people in the city to earn an income.
The governor's comments had varying reactions to it later in the week, with some calling on the governor to lock down the city. Former Health Minister Sepuka Temu, a medical doctor by profession, was one who disagreed with Governor Pakop's initial comments.
I want to say that I was not happy with the governor's decision yesterday because it's very, very clear to everybody that the current way, particularly in the areas that the news has been reporting on, and now in NCD, is really causing a lot of issues to all of us. Firstly, the death of many, many citizens in the city and in the country. And also the Port Moresby General Hospital CEO did report that 2 children have now died of COVID.
Sepuka, who is also Abau MP, said the crisis situation at POMGEN is enough for Port Moresby to go into a lockdown to reduce transmission.
It's very, very visible in the NCD and reported very well by the media and all of you that the beds are really packed. Staff are really stressed. The mortuary is really full. So they're extending mortuary space, they're extending bed space, and they're asking for staff for relief. That is enough evidence that the system is fully stretched. That is because every day, as you have been reporting, every day cases are coming in. The ambulances are doing 5 times more calls than they've ever done before. The emergency staff are seeing more emergency patients than they've ever seen before. The mortuary staff are seeing more death than they have ever seen before. And so what more do you need?
Sepuka suggested a managed form of lockdown rather than a total lockdown, which would have social and economic impacts.
And my call to the governor is, while I agree that the vaccination push is the way to go, that will not solve the immediate problem of the systems being overstretched. We need some relief. And because all of us know that COVID moves from person to person, as people move, as crowds move, then COVID moves. And so the world has demonstrated, and we're very close neighbors, Melbourne and Sydney, just down the south, that lockdowns do help. I'm not saying the tightest lockdown. No, there is a managed lockdown. For example, emphasize on controlling the crowds where the crowds are. When the last time that the NCD engaged the police personnel, I was always very happy that the police personnel had tents outside where the crowds were going. And there was very good control. This was only about 3 months ago. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. That where there are crowds, the social distancing orders cannot be met without police presence. Because our people are traditionally social beings. And so when you just give an order without policing it, people never listen. And we know people have never been listening. This is why the way, particularly with Delta variant, we are in real trouble right now.
Later in the week, with advice from various stakeholders, Governor Pakop held talks with relevant leaders to find the appropriate way forward for city residents.
We are talking about it now, the lockdown. I have discussed with ACP Wagambi and Metsupi Kumu. I've discussed with Dr. Sapuri, who is the chairman of the PNG Medical Board. I'm waiting for Secretary Health and our three CEOs to give their opinion today.
He urged the public to stop social gatherings that involve many people to enable the situation to be under control, and so it may not be necessary for a lockdown in the city.
I want to appeal to our people. It's really up to them in the city. If they self-regulate themselves, wear masks, not go along house crying a boom boom number. That's how we do a big spread, or we transmit, because virus Ronnie Goy come, we carry it around. So if we start going around and stop all the house cry and stop all the booms or stop all the big gatherings, then we will break the transmission. Then there's no need for us to go to a lockdown.
We know that the doctors, nurses here at the TAC and at Port Moresby General are doing everything possible that they can to save lives, but unfortunately there are so many patients and the severity of illness is so great that it may not be possible to save everyone.
But, we see that the trend of death, especially with kids and the young population, may possibly be attributed to the Delta variant, which is currently, active. There is active community transmission in the city.
Given the escalating situation at PomGen that has reached crisis point and many fear the worst, concern for health workers is also growing as requests have been made for more health workers to join the team and help save lives.
So I really feel sorry for the health staff who are there 24/7. I really felt sorry for not only for them there all the time, but mentally and spiritually. They are really, there's a lot of pressure on these human beings called health workers. And so I believe that the way to help at this stage, next 2 weeks, is to have a lockdown, a managed lockdown.
So as the vaccination rollout continues in the city and around the country, Port Moresby residents not only hope for the situation to be under control with reduced case and death numbers, but they also hope the crisis does not either put them out of jobs or go without food. City authorities are expected to make major announcements in the coming week on what is to happen in the immediate future.
You're watching National EMTV News. We'll have more stories after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back to the news. A fight broke out between settlers at Garden Hills and nearby residents last night in the nation's capital. According to eyewitnesses, the clash started after a mobile phone belonging to a resident was snatched by boys from the squatter settlement. The violence has left 2 people dead, several others injured, and properties damaged.
Garden Hills was in chaos last night as settlers and residents exchanged stones and bottles in the streets. The fight broke out at around 9 p.m. last night and lasted for more than 4 hours. Garden Hills became a war zone as settlers within the area took control of few residential houses near the settlement, looted a tucker shop and burnt down a house. The property costing about more than 3 million kina was turned to ashes. Owner of the house, Jenny Watos, stood helpless in the midst of the riot, watching the fire destroy her belongings.
All fight lokona blamina. Word of 3 to 4 million words properties, something to me go. Me no one plus something one the beginning me block all same naked.
According to eyewitness, the problem started on Friday evening, where a mobile phone and a mini speaker or boombox belonging to a resident was stolen at the market by squatters. In retaliation, a shootout by the resident's uncle dispersed the crowd at Garden Hills entrance market for harboring the petty criminals. The resident's uncle, who is believed to be a policeman, opened fire again at the settlers yesterday evening, causing havoc between the two factions. Following the shootout, 2 settlers were left dead and several others injured. This caused an escalation, leading to an uncontrollable situation between the settlers and Garden Hills residents. Police were not able to intervene as early as possible as the main entrance was blocked off last night by settlers. Police rapid response towards the situation could have possibly prevented the damage of properties by settlers. Jenny Wato, who has lived in Garden Hills for more than 30 years, depends on a duplex apartment to generate income from renting. But the incident has left her in a devastating feeling.
So this day staff was now we plus staff want them on beginning. Every monthly 12,000 kinas come long this properties. So when people are something, so 2 fight policemen, I want them all go settlement. So when them something come up and me found them, me sit down stop lawyer.
The situation is quiet but tense at the moment, and police are monitoring the area. Meanwhile, the community at Garden Hills are urged not to cause any more trouble, as police are in charge of the situation to maintain peace and law and order. But the settlers are calling on the rogue cop to turn himself in and allow investigation to commence for the loss of 2 innocent lives.
Family and now stock travel over the community stable here or some mipla worry los a tuple amplement lucy life. So mipla like deal one time CID, one time mipla family was in now just investigate. So mipla toxal or public locareni los no can cause one problem with.
While the street is filled with stones, bottle cracks and metals, this is not the first time similar incidents have occurred. Residents at Garden Hills are demanding relevant authorities, including the National Capital District Commission, for the removal of the squatters' settlement. Suli, National EMTV News.
True Guys Sports is next. All the details after the break.
True Kai Sports.
Welcome to Chuka Sports. The growth of cricket in the country is the lasting legacy Barramandi's captain Asad Vala wants to see. He spoke to the media after the team's performance at the T20 World Cup.
2 men on the leg side fence. That has been...
Barramandi's captain Asad Vala hopes that the next generation of cricketers coming through Cricket PNG's award-winning junior development program will be motivated by the team's historic appearance at the 2021 T20 World Cup, further boosting the profile and appeal of the sport throughout the country.
I think it's all about the pathway and the support. I think we've got a lot of kids playing at the moment, and if we can have more juniors coming through our system, I think our depth, having more depth in our pool to select from would be really good. I think everyone there just gives everything we've got, and I think I'm really proud of the effort of the boys they've given, but I think there's still more to come from us. I think the best is yet to come. I think we have learned a lot from this tournament. Hopefully we can keep improving.
Side of the ground here. And it is!
Huxley Lovai, Chukai Sports.
And that ends Chukai Sports, with the details up next.
Chukai Sports. True Kai Sports.
This weather update is proudly brought to you by MoniPlus, with you always.
I'll look at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in the southern region. Mostly fine, though partly cloudy, with a chance of a few showers in Port Moresby, Daru, Kerema, Alatau and Popondetta. In the Mamase region, mostly fine with brief showers in Ley, Medang, Wewak and Vanimo. In the New Guinea Islands region, partly cloudy with a few showers in Lorengau, Kavieng, Kimbe and Buka, and mostly fine, though partly cloudy in Kokopo and Rabaul. And in the Highlands region, cloudy with brief afternoon showers in Mount Hagen, Goroka, Kundiawa, Mendi and Wabeg.
The weather update was proudly brought to you by MoneyPlus, with you always.
And that's been the news, sport and weather for today, Sunday, 24th of October 2021. Until next time, pleasant viewing, be safe and good night.